This is Network Zero with another frequency shift. This is frequency shift number 4. And again, we are covering some more Kingdom Death content. So given that I'm covering Kingdom Death, of course, I am joined by James once again. Hello, James.
Hey there, it's nice to be back.
Yes, it's been a while since we recorded anything. I think the reason we're also doing this is because, Halloween is coming, well, this will be going out now for Halloween, so it should be Halloween night when you listen to this, or the night before, or the night after, whatever. I think everyone's a bit too busy to put out a regular episode because we're meant to be covering Werewolf at some point soon. It's just, when you've got people that have academic schedules and doing lots of teaching, me not so much, but I think David's got a lot of teaching. We're it's having time to sit down and do the book justice and do a good podcast. So that's why there's no content that way. But there is other content. So Darker Days Radio episode 73 is out, where Mike and Chig tackle the book for Wraith the Oblivion. It's a Black Dog, I think it's a Black Dog Games industry book, because it covers the rather dark and difficult topic to cover, which is Charnel Houses of Europe, the Shower. This is Wraith the Oblivion tackling in what is being commended in an incredibly well-measured and an appropriate manner, how you deal with the Holocaust in World of Darkness. So go listen to that if you want to. I'm sure there's plenty of inspiration in that for Chronicles of Darkness, or really any role-play game, if you want to tackle that difficult time period in history. But moving on, what else have we been up to? So I went over to Ireland, to Coleraine, to the Beasts of War studio, and recorded, the first 5 Lantern years of Kingdom Death. So an entirely new campaign was begun.
My goodness, I'm looking forward to watching those videos myself.
Yeah, so I think the first video will be out, should be out for Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 4 episodes will be out during the time that the Kingdom Death Kickstarter for the reprint is running. So that will be as of Black Friday, 25th November this year. I also know that Kickstarter will be running for 5 weeks, so that will cover enough time so people can get in on. If they wanted to pledge, they've got like 2 paydays they could use towards pledging. So making it run for 5 weeks is quite useful. So yes, that's all good. So I think the only thing to say about that, James, is that starting a campaign from scratch again, again, you'll still get surprised by the game. It's a very different experience. It's the first time, I think, other than when we started your campaign when you were visiting. It's the first time I've played the game other than solo. So it was myself, Warren, and Justin going through the campaign. And yeah, it's new, definitely new stuff turns up. Also, you have to see where the game takes you, and it's always really good fun. So clearly I'll be going back to recording some more episodes with them at a later point sometime next year. We'll plow through another 5 Lantern years. We'll see if we actually get an entire campaign done, or if the campaign reaches its natural conclusion, which, to be honest, I don't want to fudge it. I think we should play it out as it goes and see where we go with it.
Yeah. I mean, I was quite lucky with my campaign, I think. Anytime we lost a large amount of people, we managed to get quite a high population back. So we were fairly stable. But I've never had a campaign actually crash out on me yet, but I've only played the one so far. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how you found playing with a group as well, because that's the only way I've experienced it so far.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's people will get a chance to look at that when the video comes out.
Indeed, I'm not giving away anything on that because obviously we played through. Getting to Lantern Year 5 is the arrival of the Butcher, so that series of videos ends on quite the important end result. Well, not end result, important fight. Kind of boss fight, which is what those Nemesis encounters kind of represent in the game. That will segue us into the main topic. What have you been up to, James? I mean, you're currently between things and so forth, but you've been doing any gaming?
Yeah. I've actually been. I've returned to Dark Souls 3 because the DLC for that has come out a couple of days ago.
Okay.
It takes. I probably shouldn't go into too much spoiler territory, but it goes to a location that's a little bit different from what I've seen in the rest of the game. I've seen some rather horrible monsters in there, some kind of gross stuff. But I've also, because I've been replaying it recently, been enjoying the scenery this time around, rather than looking at it from a mechanical standpoint. And it's kind of revealed quite how I approached it the first time around. I go in looking as a games designer, and I go like, if I was going to make this room a horrible death trap, people would drop from the ceiling here, and this would be like this mimic here just after you've relaxed would probably be, or this treasure chest would be a mimic. And it turns out that if you basically expect the absolute worst, you are kind of ready for Dark Souls. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else gaming-wise. So I've been playing a bit of War Machine Hordes, trying to get some people in the local gaming club into it. I think my mate Mark is going to pick up Wood and Go Halves on the starter set for Hordes, because it just gets me more scorn. So, and given that the game's gone really heavy, back to its roots with War Beasts and War Jats, getting a whole load of more War Beasts out of the core game is not a bad thing. And I played Dead of Winter last night. So that's a board game. And that is kind of a zombie survival game. It's nothing like Zombicide. It has secret objectives. It has opportunities to be a traitor in it if that is your secret objective. So it's got multiple win conditions, and you're playing against the board while being also cooperatively trying to win the game, yet also potentially stabbing each other in the back. And that was kind of hilarious because you've got your colony, the place where you've got your people holed up against the zombies, and then you've got locations nearby which you loot to get stuff that you need, like food or weapons or fuel. And this is all taking place during winter, of course. And we got to the point where we worked out that without obviously having to do any dice, we were in the dodgy position that if one person was unlucky and fighting a zombie, they'd be dead, and that would be the end of the game. So we worked out how to get us all the way to the point where it was my go, and it was the last player turn of the game before the game is up. And we realised that we had to exile one of the other players. So there were three of us. Two of us had to choose to exile one of the other player to have all his survivors chucked out of the colony, so we have enough food to get through get through that phase, and thus not lose morale, and thus lose. So morale goes down due to starvation. It also goes down if you lose people and they die. So it also meant then that the person gets exiled gets to use their characters how they want to, their group of survivors, and you accumulate more in the game. And he sent them out to the locations where my survivors were located. And he killed them, which by basically attracting zombies to them. And his win condition was to make sure that at the end of the game, because if you get exiled, you get a new win condition.
Oh.
As the exiled players, you get to have like a vengeance kind of win condition almost. Was to have 5 characters killed off. However, in doing that, he helped me get to my secret objective, which was I only have one survivor left that I'm controlling. So it was a weird. We exiled one player. He moved towards his win condition, but it also moved me to my win condition. So we both won, and the other player, who obviously had also reached the end, counted as not winning because he didn't reach any of his win conditions. So other than the main objective. So it's a very, very fun game. And it has that resource kind of usage allocation type thing. It's kind of cool like that. And I can't think any other gaming. Did the Artemis Bridge Simulator?
Yeah, I've done that as well. It's did you enjoy it?
Yeah, we had like 3 ships operating at once at one point, and so if you spread out the command, all the positions round, you can easily have it running. So if you're essentially, it makes sense if you're captain with science and communications, because obviously you're always going to be on the scanners declaring war against someone. So dishing out orders is not a nice thing for me to be doing, though. My control freak element comes out.
Oh man, it's been a while since I played that, but we had it set up. We just did one spaceship, but we had a whole bunch of different consoles, and we had the captain. The captain just stood on the bridge and told everyone what to do. It was good fun.
I think there's some other nice ones out there. There's one which runs on Linux that has full 3D motion and graphics. So it'd be interesting to do that. I don't know what version of Linux it runs on. It might be quite easy to do what with Windows Bash being a thing. I'll have to investigate that. Any other gaming? Any last bits of gaming, James?
So unfortunately, my PC's mostly blown up recently.
Oh shit!
So my graphics card has gone to pieces, but it means that I'm looking at my PlayStation for more gaming. So PlayStation Plus this month has put Resident Evil for free if you've got a subscription. So I'm probably going to download Resident Evil and have a play of that over Halloween.
Oh, okay, cool. That's wicked.
Yeah,
excellent.
Heck,
yeah,
I might even be able to stream it.
PCs, that's the whole thing. Like, I don't know whether I want to be in a position to be buying. Do I want to buy a PlayStation 4 next year, or do I buy technically more useful to me and get a good gaming PC, which I can also use for video editing because it will render stuff, and also on the side I can use for calculations for work. I can run stuff using GPU. I can run calculations using GPUs. So I think I might go with the PC.
Yeah, as much as I love that my PlayStation is pretty solid, and it plays the games when I want to play games and things. My PC has been so invaluable for everything. I can access. You can play lots of the cheaper games, there's the old stuff. You go on Steam or Humble Bundle, pick up a whole bunch of things, and you just get a lot more variety than you're going to get on consoles because the games developers don't have to go through the same kind of submission requirements as they do for consoles on the PC.
I also think the one game that was originally getting me towards the PS4, which was going to be Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
I think I've heard rumours that they're mostly going to put it on PC.
Okay. I don't think PC is in its original release lineup. I think it's PlayStation and Xbox.
I don't think it was going to be on Xbox even.
Oh.
I think it was originally kind of exclusive, but obviously in this day and age, the difference between developing for a console and developing for a PC is negligible. So, our segue was about ending that climactic battle against the Butcher that I did for Beast of War. Means that we're going to talk about the Butcher. So the Butcher is a Nemesis encounter, and Nemesis encounters are different in Kingdom Death to the regular hunts, to the other quarries, in that you do not hunt the Nemesis encounters. They come looking for you. So essentially, when you on your Lantern Year tracker, when it says there's a Nemesis encounter, there'll be a marker for it. That year go on of. So you tick off your Lantern Year, and then you get that marker that's next to that Lantern Year. That means your next hunt has to be the Nemesis encounter. So you don't go on a hunt. There's no hunt tracker, no nothing. But you do get to therefore be you get to attack first in the round. So you get to go first in a round against the beasts. Urka is again a little bit tougher. He's toughness 9. He's only movement 5, so that's okay. But he has a few things, such as... so he's got a few cards. He's got like 12 AI cards. That's not too bad, I guess. And then he's got a few of these things. So first of all, he's got Berserker, which is he draws +1 AI for every turn, which is just lethal. He's got... Fast Target, which is at the beginning of each monster turn, you reshuffle the Butcher's hit location deck. So that's when it says reshuffle the monster's hit location deck. That doesn't mean the ones which you've also already cycled through, which have been discarded. So I think essentially what Fast Target means is it kind of counteracts things like the Cat Eye Circlet. No, not Cat Eye Circlet. Was Circlet? Sorry. On the hit location deck. And then you've also got Dreaded Trophies, which really only really becomes more of an issue as
you start to lose survivors. It kind of leads to a snowballing effect. If you start losing people to the Butcher, it just becomes much less likely that you're going to survive.
There's a good reason why none of that really influenced the final showdown we had against him for the Beast of War 1. And the other thing he has is Infectious Lunacy, which is as you suffer brain damage, as your survivors in that fight suffer brain damage, each time they gain a lunacy token, and once you've acquired 3 of these, you suffer the frenzy brain trauma, which is basically roll a d5. You get that much insanity. You get +1 strength token, +1 speed.
Yeah,
I think.
But you lose the ability to use survival actions and use fighting arts as well.
Yeah. And then the other thing that the Butcher has is his Instinct, which is Menace, which obviously ties in with Infectious Lunacy, which is that if the Butcher has no way to target anyone and can't thus perform an action, this is the closest survivor, and they suffer 1 brain damage per monster level. So at higher levels of the Butcher, that's pretty vicious. And obviously, that will... Eventually, the Butcher then, I think we can quite happily say, is a monster which is going to lead to your survivors no longer having survival or being able to make use of survival because they're going to go feel frenzied. Meaning, I think there's already a very early obvious tactic here, which is be precious with your survival.
Yeah.
So you'll have points to play. You have survival point or your survival actions, and you'll have your survival points, but if you try and hang on to them too much, you're going to get to the point where they're of no use whatsoever because you're going to be driven to frenzy. So I think that's the first thing to say about him.
And especially with his with the frenzy and the Berserker ability, he's going to be doing 2 AI cards every turn. So you don't want to be weathering that very long. You want to go in and hit hard and as strong as you can straight away.
Yes, definitely. And there are some dirty things that can happen with the Butcher, but I think we'll reveal that once we get through the AI cards which are in his deck. So, okay, James, do you want to take the first one that's in his deck? I think I've got the list of them alphabetical order here. So there's Backhand.
Backhand, right? So that's quite an interesting one because it's an impact zone, which means that it's going to be hitting everyone around him apart from people in his blind spot. And then what have we got? So in a clockwise order, attack each survivor. And if there's no one there, menace. So it's quite an accurate attack. It's adding 4 to its accuracy. It's quite strong, and it also has some nice knockback and things. So that's kind of a bit of a trap almost. If everyone's running into combat to smash him up,
yeah,
it's going to hit pretty much everything.
The thing to say with is immediately when you start looking at the Butcher's AI cards, and even if you look at his basic action, so his basic action is speed 2, so it's a move and attack, speed 2 plus. So the damage it does bleed, and that's something that we're going to see a lot of with the Butcher is do bleed.
Mm.
Going up against the Butcher without something to negate bleed like bandages is bad, and also you'll immediately notice that compared to regular kind of the White Lion, the Antelope, or the Quarries, the accuracy on Nemesis encounters on their attacks is a lot lower. But it's their accuracy, it's harder for them to hit. So all that evasion that you can get off your items and your equipment and so forth really starts to pay dividends against a Nemesis encounter. So yeah, Backhand's pretty mean. So the next card, if we go on in alphabetical order, would be Berserker. So the next one off that is Butcher's Roar.
Oh. Yeah. So that's a B class AI card, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Non-death survivors, and on a 4+, it takes brain damage brain damage per monster level is knocked down. Now that's pretty. The knockdown's probably the worst part of that. The brain damage is going to push you towards frenzying, but knockdown, especially against something like the Berserker, is quite unfortunate because then it's going to hit on a 3+ if you're on the floor, isn't it? I think that's the.
Yeah, I think I think it hits. If you're against the beast and the beast is knocked down, I think it hits on a 3+. I think if you're knocked down, you still get your evasion as normal. You're just knocked down.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't change. It's only monsters if they're knocked down. You get that 3+ to hit. But you're knocked down, obviously, and that's if you're obviously frenzying and everyone else is frenzying. There's no way you can do encourage, so you can't do that survival action to get people up.
Mm-hmm.
So is pretty mean and is a good target to take out if you're looking for particular AI cards to eliminate. Then the next one, which is a advanced one, is Devour Lambton, which is he's looking for his closest threat generally, and the target due to this is doomed. So for an advanced action, it's pretty mean because you obviously can't use survival against him. So if you're the target, you will to make a dash action to move out of range of him when he does his move and attack. And his move and attack, again, speed 2, hitting on a 4+, that's not too bad. You can negate some of that due to obviously, having good evasion and cover. But if he hits you, the target loses their lantern and they gain -3 accuracy tokens and lose all survivors. remaining survivor, they die outright. It's a really vicious AI card.
Yeah, anything with doomed generally spells trouble. But the possibility of instant death, even if you survive the attack, well,
yeah, or just losing all the survival points that you have is rough. Okay, the next one he's got up then is James. What do you make of this one?
Was that double hack? Sorry. Okay,
yeah.
Double hack. So, yeah, closest target facing, closest threat facing, closest threat. So yeah, he's gonna go for easy targets in front of him first. But then he moves up and goes absolutely nuts with a speed 4 attack, and then bleed 2.
Yeah,
on all of that. That's horrendous. Would you be taking bleed 2 on each attack?
No, it's only after he's done any damage. It's not after each attack.
There we go. Okay, so I mean, 2 bleeding anyway. That's over a third of the bleeding you need to get killed.
Yeah, you only need 5 bleed in total to die. So it again, it's really important when going up against the butcher to go in with bandages. So if you haven't made any before you go up against him, then good luck. Okay, we talked about dreaded trophies. The next one is a mood card, which is called Embrace the Pain. So when it comes into play, as always, you draw another AI card. And when he gets wounded, you place a token on this card. And once he's gained 2 or more tokens, you remove them and he performs a basic action. So again, this is which means that the butcher is capable of making is in a turn. It could be dishing out like 3 actions, so 2 AI card attacks and a basic action attack, and perhaps even another one depending upon what the hit location is that you hit. That might have a reaction. So, as far as mood cards are concerned, it's a good one to it's one you need to get rid of. There's not much you can really do other than use a whisker harp to deal with that.
Yeah, and I definitely think this guy, he's got a couple of moods actually. He's got a fair amount that means a whisker harp is probably reasonable.
Yes,
like 4 different moods in the deck, and I think all of them are probably worth getting rid of.
I think the next mood card we'll talk about is even worse. So, James, do you want to run us through Forbidden Light?
Forbidden Light, right. So when it comes into play, draw an AI card, which is pretty awkward anyway. So you're going to be doing...
Pretty standard, yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to get your mood, and then you're going to be doing an attack as well. But the mood itself gives you a small light radius, which is a square around the butcher himself. And when a survivor ends their act in the light radius, they gain a -1 strength token. So if you've been wading in and wailing on the monster, you're just going to start getting weaker.
Yeah.
And then...
yeah. I was going to say it's an example of why the best thing to use against the butcher is like ranged wares. It's a bit. He's in some respects, is a bit like fighting. You still there, James?
Sorry, I lost you for a sec there.
I was saying he's a bit like fighting the White Lion because you want ranged and or reach. And so he's got this light radius, and if you end your act in there, you get a -1 strength token, which is also annoying. What's
And
the rest
it
of that do,
builds
sorry?
each at the end of each one's turn, you put a token on it, and when it's got 5 tokens, discard the mood card and all the -1 strength tokens gained from it.
Yeah, so it's like you kind of need to wail on the butcher as hard as possible if you begin to suffer from it.
Yeah, because unfortunately, while you might lose strength, it can also take you below 0 strength, can't it? The tokens. So you could have a survivor who started with 0, going down to -5 strength, I think, which would make your chance to hit be absolutely horrendous.
You're basically going to have to hit on criticals.
Yeah, and I don't think he has many locations that even let you take advantage of that.
No, there aren't. There definitely are very few locations on him where you can do a critical hit, if any, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a
So
one of his cards got errated on the website. So if you go on to Kingdom Death, you can see that one of them's been updated. But that's a hit location, so we'll get to that later.
oh yeah, I printed that off. We couldn't make use of it in the Beast of War thing because it was just I knew it was there, but it was just we just played it out of the box. We didn't do any of the 1.4. It was just more effort than it's worth. I mean, I might remind them to do that next time we record. Anyway, carrying on, we've got Frenzied Berserker. Well, there's nothing more to say about this one because this is a special card that you use for the higher rank ones, which is basically you draw, rather than draw one extra AI card, you're drawing 2 extra AI cards per turn. So higher rank Berserkers are pretty insane to fight against. Yeah. There's not much more to say about that. That's
a whirlwind of cleavers and choppy death.
Yeah. Okay, so Gaze of Death. What have we got going on here, James?
So I'm pretty sure this killed my first saviour. They came on the hunt, and the butcher picked closest threat that it's looking at, and it looms over them. And if it's adjacent to the target, you roll a d10, and on a 3+, it suffers brain damage equal to the monster's level, is knocked down, gains 2 understanding and a random disorder. So, understanding's good. Disorders can be positive, but they also can be negative. It's a bit of a gamble. But the brain damage, if you have an unlucky roll, that can kill you.
Yeah, I mean, it's equal to the monster's level. I think this is one of the things I said why, and this will come out in the videos I did with Beast of War, is that it was quite interesting playing through the basic game again, because I was going in with it like we were playing it essentially where obviously Justin Warren had never played before, and so we're thinking what was cool and trying stuff out. Yet I was clearly we're playing it the optimized way, where I know enough stuff that you can take advantage of. And so one of the things I made clear before we went up against the butcher was that we had to go fight an antelope to get the to farm the insanity.
Yeah, I think we.
That's always. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, yeah, we went in with the antelope helm so that we could have one person just screaming everybody insane every turn.
Yeah. That's a good choice as well.
Yeah, but yeah,
okay,
so useful to have that brain armor in this fight.
Yeah. Okay, Hack City. I've never ever had this done against me. I would have remembered it. So it's closest threat facing, closest threat if not menace. Move and attack target. Speed 4 again. Speed 4. Hitting on 4s. and after damage, for each hit, make an additional attack roll. Continue to roll until all attack rolls miss. Wow. So that's... You're hitting with 4 dice, or more if you're playing a higher level. And essentially you're doing re-rolls until everything is missed. And that's the amount of attacks that have hit. Yeah. There's not much more to say about that. That's pretty insane. However, if you survive all of this, you trigger the legendary. You trigger the story event, which is Legendary Lungs, which unlocks. I think has a potential to unlock a secret fighting art.
Yeah. So you have a chance to get. Well, it reads. It's a nice little story event. You roll a d10 and you see what happens to your character. Interestingly, some of the story events for mid-combat stuff, some of them are affected by innovations. So if you have drumming, for example, as you hear the beat of your heart echoing in your ears as you lose the ability to breathe, you remember the drums and it gives you a boost, and you can kind of go to a different result. So that's one of the things I love with the story events, just little changes. But yeah, if you're lucky, you can get Legendary Lungs, which I think I got someone to have Legendary Lungs, and then the butcher chopped his head right off. So yeah, I don't remember it. Yeah, Legendary Lungs is pretty nice. It's a good fighting art, that one. Once per attack, for each successful hit, make an additional attack roll. So it kind of echoes the butcher there.
Yeah.
And yeah, extra attacks. That's always good.
Okay, let's move on. Right, we'll ignore that one because the next one along cards, that's a special card which only turns up if you're playing level 3. Fine. Lantern Frenzy then, which is another mood card. So when it comes into play, random survivor gains a priority target token. It cannot be removed. Okay. So that's interesting. So someone basically gets to be bait for the rest of the game. You draw an AI card, as always with these mood cards. Lantern Frenzy is in play. The Butcher gains +2 movement and +1 speed tokens. At any time, the survivor of the priority target token may sacrifice themselves and lead the Butcher far away. They perish and their gear is archived, and you can end the showdown immediately, and you skip the aftermath. So, and then you discard Lantern Frenzy if the survivor with the priority target token is killed. So this mood card comes into play. It gives you the option to shortcut your way out of the fight, which is interesting. But obviously, that comes at a high cost. That you could lose some decent gear unless you palm them off onto someone. So it swings and roundabouts with that one. And the fact you don't get to do the aftermath is annoying because obviously you've technically not defeated the Butcher, so you're not going to gain any gear or anything from him. But at the same time, you're not going to have failed against him, have him do what he does when you fell the showdown against him. So it's not that bad. It's not that great. It's at least a way of getting out of a fight if things go really, really bad.
Yeah, that's something that I could see being quite useful when you're maybe midway through a campaign and you have a decent amount of resources at your base, because his reaction when he gets defeated means that you lose all of your resources. So, yeah, I would quite probably happily throw a survivor under the bus for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next AI card then is Lantern Hunger. Oh dear, what have we got here, James?
Well, so another one where the target's doomed. It's quite an awkward one because it targets the furthest survivor. So it's going to change the way that you're kind of trying to manage him around the battlefield. And the butcher disappears in a flash of light and then reappears next to that survivor who's furthest away. And then he goes nuts and does 4 attacks, which is going to be pretty nasty. And he also gives priority target to that survivor as an after effect. So, yeah, you're going to have to kind of look after them, possibly just run them screaming past everyone else who's originally surrounding the butcher.
Yep. I mean, this is the thing, so it's placed in an unoccupied space adjacent to the target. So the only way to get around this is if you've basically got a survivor corner away from him, and then you've got 2 more survivors occupying the adjacent squares. In which case, if that happens, the butcher then isn't going to do this, but then it says discard this card if it's not possible. So you just discard it. So it's the only way to counter it. Basically, it's rarely going to be like that. So I would not assume that you can do that. So the next mood card is an AI card is Screaming, which is when it comes into play, all non-death survivors suffer 1 brain damage per monster level. So again, more of the theme of the butcher does lots of attacks, or doing lots of brain damage, using bleed as a part of his attacks. And then at the start of the butcher's turn, all non-death survivors suffer 1 brain damage per monster level, and then you discard Screaming if a survivor dies. Having that go on and on and on, and consistently causing brain damage to your characters is quite bad. First of all, it's going to push you towards frenzy, and secondly, he's going to keep doing it until someone dies. So, again, it's another free attack, essentially, that he gets to do. Yeah.
Interestingly, though, with the frenzy at an early point in the campaign, it probably actually pushes you more. You probably get more of an advantage with being frenzied, because you'll spend what little survival you have quickly, and then suddenly you're stronger and faster.
Yes, actually, that is a very good point. I think in the first butcher encounter, you're actually aiming to go towards frenzy as quickly as possible.
Because we found our first butcher actually to be quite easy when we fought him, and then the level 2 butcher proved to be a heck of a lot harder because we were relying on all of our fancy tricks and nifty maneuvers by that point.
Okay, now there's a few other AI cards he's got left. We'll go through. He's got Bite, which is again closest threat type thing. Speed 2, hits on a 4+, and the fun thing with this is that after he's hit, target suffers 1 random severe head injury. Bite is horrific in that case. It could easily quite kill a survivor outright. He also has Hack, and some of these cards there's duplicates of, so he's got like two of each of these last few, I think. If I'm right. He's got Hue, which is Hack. Hue, which is hitting on 3+. Is one of the few attacks where it's low speed but high damage. It's going to be doing some bleed and some knocking down of survivors. He's got Kick. Now this is the fucking bastard scenario that can happen and is what I have faced recently, is Kick. So let's go through this one. So again, it's closest threat facing. closest threat, or it does menace. He moves in to attack. It's speed 2, hitting on 4s, damage 1 off each attack, and then after he's done damage, the target suffers a knockback of 5 and gains a priority target token. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not too bad until then you realise what the next thing is, which is after he's done a kick, he then gets to draw another AI card and play that out. So this is kick can lead him to drawing 3 AI cards in a round or more. And this is where I get to where I say or more, because it can be that you draw kick and your next card after he's completed kick is another kick. So that means he's doing 4 actions, attacks in a round, and obviously at higher levels with his frenzied berserker, that's now that'll be 5 actions. But what gets really problematic is if you've whittled down his AI deck and the only cards that you have left are kick and kick, for the following reason: because you draw each AI card, you draw it and then you resolve it before you draw the next one. So at which point, when you've completed an AI card, it goes back to the discard pile, and if they're the only cards left in the deck, then it means it's automatically shuffled, so it's then the only card left in your deck once you draw your next AI card. So you can be in a position where you can get infinite kicks being done.
Yeah, there's I mean that is the horrendous loop, and I think when it was pointed out to Poots, he said, "Yep, that's kind of fine." Sometimes he gets absolutely mad and starts just kicking people to death.
Yeah,
it's quite vicious as well with the amount of moods that the Butcher has. You could theoretically have 4 mood cards, and most of the moods, other than Screaming, you draw another AI anyway. So, you might have what you think is half of the deck left, and then it all just suddenly spams itself onto the battlefield.
Yes, it could easily do that. I think the Butcher could quite happily empty his deck and be left with 2 kicks and start, dealing some serious pain. Because the moment I spotted this is, spoiler alert of fighting the Butcher, I spotted this coming up and I was like, wait a minute, Mikey. And it's like, we're going to deal with this, because otherwise we're going to get fucked over by the Butcher. And so his last AI card is Wild Carve. Do you want to go through this one, James?
Yeah, so Wild Carve, it doesn't seem too bad to begin with. It's closest threat. Speed 2, accuracy 4, and then after damage, the target gains a bleeding token. And that's that's not as bad as some of the other attacks he's doing, but it's followed up by another effect, which is all survivors adjacent to the monster suffer 1 damage to a random hit location and gain a bleeding token. And that's not even rolling for hits or anything. You're just boom, damage and bleeding. So with the amount of bleeding he throws around, that's pretty nasty.
Yeah. To deal out that amount of bleed and damage to random locations is intense. So that's basically the Butcher's AI deck. It's not fun. It's not pretty. It will take you out and do some serious ass whooping. I don't know which of those cards, if there was really a way of whittling down the AI deck in the right way. I think plenty of those mood cards are always targets to get taken out of the deck if possible. At the same time, though, if they're in play, that's one less wound you have to do to the Butcher to kill him. So you've got to weigh up that in that sense. I would say the kicks are the things to look out for, and getting those out of the deck, because you just don't want to be left in the scenario where those are the last 2 cards left.
Yeah, if you can remove a kick, that's probably a good plan if you get the opportunity to.
So, hit locations. So as we said, James, I don't think any of his hit locations have a critical location on it, except for the updated version of Furious Scrag.
Yeah.
A lot of his locations are also, I think, quite a few of his locations are either impervious or super dense, which also means you're not going to be able to wound him, or in the early game he's going to smash up your weapons because you're going to go in with bone weapons more than likely because that's all you've got. So let's see. So we've got the armored pig shoulder, which is super dense.
Yeah.
We've got the butcher's mask, which is if you hit it, that's one to, really, if you hit it, makes life a lot easier.
Oh, yeah. So there's both of his cleavers, which are the impervious cards that he's got.
Yes.
And the cleavers... the cleavers aren't so bad because you do gain +1 insanity for hitting them, which is going to armor you against a bit of his brain damage.
He has obviously reflexes, and again, because he's got no criticals, it means he's always going to get some sort of reaction if his reaction is a reflex. So like this one with the Furious Bellow, which is where unless the attacker is deaf and has a courage of 3+, they again take more brain damage and are knocked down, which could mean if you resolve again, you've got to resolve these in the right order because you don't want to do that one first because it's going to lead to your other hits being cancelled. Some of them, obviously, like Furious Breastplate is actually harder to wound. Furious Crown, what does that do? Basically knocks everyone down as a reflex. That's next to him. Furious Gauntlet means, again, more intimidation and brain damage being dealt, which is awful. So again, even his hit location deck is about brain damage to you. But there's also chances like Furious Gut. If you wound him, he's knocked down, which is good, and you get +1 courage. Furious Scrag is a chance of having something really awesome.
So long as that is the location at which you killed the butcher.
Yes.
Which is interesting if you can stack your hit decks, the hit location deck.
Yes. Furious Shoulder does, again, a lot more of knock down and knock back. And really, I think the thing to talk about is his trap.
Yeah. So that's that's quite a vicious one. So it targets everything adjacent to him, or it affects everything adjacent to him. The attacker themselves is doomed, so you're not able to dodge out of it or escape. All survivors in the zone gain 1 bleeding token and suffer 5 knockback, which would be that would be enough for a trap anyway, if it wasn't that he's also going to perform a basic action towards the attacker. So he's going to split everybody up if they're surrounding him, and then he's going to close in on the attacker and probably do even more bleeding at that point.
More than likely. Again, in the last hit location you've got here is the Thick Cape, which if you hit that, again, there's the chance that you're going to suffer brain damage. So a lot of his hit location deck is going to push you towards frenzy, and there's not much you can do about that. So overall, the Butcher is quite the fight. It'll be, but there are ways and means around it. There certainly are things you can use. I think like ranged attacks or reach attacks help a lot. Or and given the way that his hit location deck shuffles, sometimes just being able to deal lots of hits at once helps. But assuming you beat the Butcher, what benefits do we get from beating the Butcher, James?
So the benefits, they can be pretty nice. You roll a d10, and you add the level of the Butcher that you fought to the result. He can either disappear and leave you nothing. You can get some lantern resources, or you can even get gear from the Butcher themselves. And heck, one of the things you can do is you can get something that helps you regrow a limb that's been severed. But the gear is really nice. There's the Butcher's Cleaver, or 2 Butcher's Cleavers, in fact. They're paired weapons with 5 strength and speed, strength, and to hit. Yeah, so they're really accurate, really strong, but you've got to be insane to use them.
Yeah, and you have to you're gonna have to fight the Butcher twice and hopefully roll that result to get it, because you only get 1 Butcher's Cleaver on one of those fights, on a single fight. So you're not going to get a pair. But yeah, it's a pretty decent bit of rare gear.
Yeah, and especially early game, because it's not a fragile weapon, and it's just a really strong axe. And having 2 of them, goodness, 4 attacks at +5 strength and +5 accuracy is nice. But you can also get the Forsaken Mask if you roll. Bizarrely well.
You need to
get a 13 on a d10.
Yeah, you need to have fought a level 3 Butcher for this to even be an option. Because the Forsaken Mask is not just a bit of gear; it's actually quite useful for assessment location.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, you can archive it, which is return it back to the box, and build the Mask Maker, which lets you fight some of the really, really challenging special legendary monsters. But its use effect, or its equip effect, is really nice as well. 2 head armor, which is not to be sniffed at. But at the start of your act, if you're insane, gain +1 action.
Okay.
So that is actually quite nice, because it mimics his Berserker trait, where he gets to do 2 actions. You're wearing his mask and you're doing 2 actions yourself. And I know we've been discussing mechanics and stuff, but I do really love the kind of flavour that you get out of this, because he it's a monster with kind of a lot of furious, kind of unpredictable attacks in really close range. So it's just this whirling dervish of like moodiness. It's kind of driven by its emotions, so it's like a berserker almost. And sometimes when it gets really moody and really wrapped up in its emotions, it's kind of weaker and leaves itself a little bit vulnerable, even though it becomes much stronger. And that just that feels really nice and satisfying from a kind of meta story point of view, when you're actually, if you're looking at it as a narrative encounter.
Yeah. So, I mean, have you ever fought the level 3 Butcher then, James?
No.
No, never have I. I've only ever done levels 1 and 2. And yeah, level 1 is... I think level 1 can be easy or hard depending upon how lucky you are with your assessment development to begin with. Level 2, I think you can... it might be a case of just sending people to the sacrifice kind of situation. But it's a fun fight, and also because it's a nemesis encounter, the amount of resources you're getting from it is not massive. There's no hunt. So again, it's kind of one of those checks and balances kind of points where it stops, because by Lantern Year 5, you're going to have quite a lot of survivors in your camp. You should have quite a lot of survivors in your camp. And this is a way of, whittling down the numbers again for you.
Yeah, we found that the Nemesis encounters seemed almost perfectly timed, so that just as we were getting up to the point where we were developing society, which is that crucial 15 population, a Nemesis would turn up and eat 4 people.
That can happen.
But it's nice as well, because it means that at this point, if you haven't established death principles, you're probably going to encounter that. And after the Nemesis encounter, if you have lost anyone, you're probably going to be pushed more towards it's probably a good idea that we try and bring some more survivors into the world. So you're hopefully going to establish a life principle if you've kind of avoided it for this long.
I have to say, fighting the Butcher often has led to sets of rawhide armor being completed, because the principle of death that the camp follows is cannibalism. That's happened. So in some respects, fighting the Butcher is kind of lean on resources, but that's just waste not, want not kind of situation, that if your camp is already taking cannibalism as its death principle, actually you're still able to develop and make things quite happily. Which really, I think, talking about that principle leads us on to talking about some of the main story events in the early game. And we're going to talk about a few of those right now, after this short little break. So as I said before the break, we were going to look at story events and some of the first ones. And the first thing that happens when your starting survivors finish the fight against the initial starter White Lion, there's a settlement story event that they go through, which is the first day, which leads you through which events to go through. It tells you how many extra survivors you get. There's a role for that. But the first story event you have is the returning survivors. And this essentially just shows you how to build your initial camp. So you nominate an initial survivor. You nominate a survivor that you have, and they gain +1 courage. And they're basically the first one to talk in whatever language they determine they will speak. And this means you can add the White Lion to your quarry list on the sheet, and your settlement gains the language innovation, which is really the most basic innovation that you've got, because it unlocks the entire innovation tree, essentially. And you can then begin to innovate. So, after your first initial hunt, your first initial fight against a White Lion, you should have something between 1 to 4 endeavors that you'll make use of. And those endeavors are used, for particular, spent on particular things. And those will be spent on building locations or innovating. So after you've got the first language, you build the innovation deck, which contains, at this point, a certain number of cards, certain cards which are placed in there, and that's the deck which you'll randomly draw from when you do innovations. But as you draw and put into play an innovation, as you innovate, it will unlock new innovations which go into that same deck. So that deck is constantly updated as you innovate. And the other thing you do when you return survivors is that you put down the first location, which is the Lantern Hoard, which is essentially a place where all the lanterns are gathered, all these huge collection of them, and is what is repelling the monsters from the camp. And at the Lantern Horde, obviously, you can spend endeavors to create new new locations in the settlement, which are, the Skinnery, Organ Grinder, and Bone Crafter. So it's your basic armor, your basic equipment, and your basic weapons. And someone can sit in front of the Lantern Horde and they gain +1 understanding, but they have to miss the hunt phase. So the first story event really is just about getting you through how the game works for the settlement events. So, James, what's the next major story event after that one?
So the first major event after that is really the introduction of the Antelope, which is the very next year. So it's quite interesting because every time a new monster is going to be added to your quarry list, you actually get an event which introduces them. So they become available in the environment and something kind of heralds it. The Antelope is heralded by endless screams in the darkness, which is quite apt. Did we talk about this when we talked about the Antelope? Or
I can't quite remember, no.
But yeah, you again nominate a you add the Screaming Antelope to your quarry list, and then you nominate a survivor to go through the story event. And that one's quite simple. It's another D10 table with a bunch of different outcomes on it. But the early events can be really beneficial. You can gain a fighting art from it.
Yes, you could get the Orator of Death fighting art, and it's really an opportunity that the survivor a lot of these story events you'll see you can get certain survivors to be kind of advanced quicker down certain things like understanding and courage, so that also helps towards how your camp develops.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's, as you said, every monster has an introductory story event that you read through. I think the ones for the basic hunts in the core game are quite short, but if you look at some of the introductory stories for, like, the Dragon King or the Flower Knight, those stories are like across multiple pages with lots of artwork, and they're quite fun.
Yeah.
So Endless Screams is nothing too crazy there. What's the next one that comes after that?
Well, you have the Nemesis encounter with the Butcher, but after that Lantern Year, you have Hands of Heat, which is Hands of Heat is quite a beneficial one. I think if you're lucky. I think there's downsides as well if you roll particularly badly.
Yes.
But one of the big benefits of the Hands of Heat event is that you automatically innovate the lantern oven.
Yes, and if you've been doing innovations almost every Lantern Year through the game, this will be the 5th innovation that you will make, which also triggers another story event, which is actually in the recordings for Beast of War. We totally forgot. So when I go back there, we still have one story event to do before we go into the next Lantern Year. But it's a good one. It's actually kind of a cool one to have held back. So this is going to be spoiler events when we spoil it when we talk about it. So yeah, Lantern Oven's cool. Again, another survivor, a nominated survivor. They get +1 courage, and they get to experiment with lanterns. So James, what do you make of this?
So it's interesting in that you've got from a mechanical point of view, you've got your D10, you've got a D10 chart, but if you do well enough, you actually go on to a different event, which has its own breakdown of rewards, which is kind of interesting. It's one of the ways that I think it does lend replayability to it, because I've had this event a couple of times, and it's always been very different how it's worked out. But it can go as badly as losing somebody entirely, and gaining a story event that pops up on the timeline in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Or, even with a very low roll, you can get to the point where you earn a secret fighting art.
Yes. So if you roll kind of middle of the table, you'll get +1 permanent strength for the survivor, which is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you get the Lantern of an Innovation, of course. And you also get the Red Fist secret fighting art,
And
which is awesome.
Yeah, I remember that one being... Oh, yeah, that is so useful, that one. Saved our butts a number of times. Each survivor... Well, at the start of each showdown, each survivor gains a +1 strength token. And you can spend +1 strength tokens in place of survival.
I think that's where it gets interesting if you've got things that can help generate +1 strength tokens somehow. I don't know what would... I can't think off the top of my head what would do that, but I think...
Well, frenzying for a start.
Oh, yeah, frenzying, but you can't use survival if you're frenzied. Unless someone cures you of being frenzied. That's the thing. I don't know if someone could cure you of your head injury partway through a showdown. Yes, that's interesting. The lantern branding is kind of cool. So what have we got here? What's it say? So it's a ritual branding. Basically, they're walking on, heated, broken lanterns, and either they can, if you roll low, you just get lots of survival added to all departing survivors, and you get the Hands of Heat event again in a random point down the timeline, or your survivor gets permanent extra speed or permanent extra strength, or something really bad happens that they get blinded, but they get +1 luck. Again, +1 luck is not bad. +1 luck is really useful. So it's a cool little story event, and I think it's kind of like, as I say, if you've done all your innovations almost each year, this should be the one which is your 5th one, which unlocks another story event, which is maybe worth talking about in a moment. Well, maybe it's the next one we talk about, or maybe we should talk about the Bone Witch. Let's talk about the Bone Witch, because she has... I read on forums and stuff, there's kind of a mixed reaction to this story event. So she's like this, the Bone Witch is, as it says, is a woman, covered in tattoos and has bones. I think there's mostly a model for her somewhere they've done at some point, or they might do. Anyway, all returning survivors gain +3 insanity, so that's not bad. Insane returning survivors are drawn to the Bone Witch, and they have to spend endeavors at the witch camp. And during the settlement phase, any survivor may endeavor at the witch camp if they choose. I think the Bone Witch you can also trigger if you exile someone due to the murder settlement event. And so what do we get with the Bone Witch? Either someone gets permanently scarred and loses strength and accuracy, and the Bone Witch is an event again 3 years down the line. Or the person loses their eyes and gains -4 accuracy but +4 permanent strength, which is nuts.
Yeah.
Or you can get the extra sense fighting art and some bone resources. Or, what's the other thing she does? Whispers horrors to you, and you gain insanity and understanding and the following ability called Homing Instinct, which means you get a bonus on your runaway story event, which you only do if you've got the option to do it because you've innovated Guidepost or something else like that. Oh no, you can run away anyway. Sorry, but there's some options if you've got Guidepost and so forth. So the Bone Witch is kind of pluses and minuses all over the place, I think, with her. But the idea of getting +4 permanent strength is kind of fun. But at the cost of accuracy, I'm not too sure. Yeah, and then the next major story event to really to mention is the Hooded Knight, who turns up if you get, because if you get your 5 innovations, which the Lantern Oven will do, I think that's the principle of which one is that? Is it a principle? No, it's not a principle, but it unlocks this event, which is the Hooded Knight.
Yeah.
So do you want to run us through what the Hooded Knight is then, James?
So we actually completely missed the Hooded Knight for most of our campaign, which is unfortunately one of the things. Sometimes you just miss where one of the interactions goes, and
Okay.
we slipped that. But where are we? 121. So we did have it occur later, as soon as we realised we'd missed it. Here we are. So yeah, a stranger emerges from the darkness. So when he first appears, they're an inscrutable stranger. You have no idea what they're here for. You roll on a table and find out what his reaction is to begin with. It can go badly. We had it go very badly our first time, and we lost 2 population, and had him come back later. But you can even learn some fighting arts from him, or you can receive a strange parcel, which kind of brings the rest of the event into being. Because Hooded Knight's something that kind of comes round and again, doesn't it?
It is, because the parcel contains within it I think one of the most important bits of gear in the entire game, which is the Twilight Sword. So it's only relevant if you're playing the core campaign, or at least you're playing the core game and you're going up against playing through the standard campaign. And that's the Twilight Sword, which is a cursed weapon, which means you can't remove it from your gear grid. I think it's sentient, so you can only use it if you're insane. And the Twilight Sword is important because it's important for fighting the end boss. And of course, to do that, it means it's a weapon that's really, really crap to begin with, because it's really hard to hit with, but it gets progressively easier the more times you progress in your expertise, the specialization with it, which leads us to, as you say, James, the other bit of the Hooded Knight event, which is the duel, which essentially is a way of speeding up that progression of that character's ability with the Twilight Sword. Of course, it could go terribly wrong again, and your Twilight Knight in training could die, or they can take a lot of injuries, or they can just progress as normal. So it's one of the most important story events, I think, that turns up on a regular basis within the game.
Yeah, and if you have the Twilight Sword, it's a huge asset later on. It's interesting, though, because it's a cursed item, it means that you have this powerful survivor with this strong weapon, but if you lose them, you lose the weapon.
Mm.
And, you have to kind of start again. So there becomes this real risk reward. And, to begin with, you don't know that it's useful against the end boss. It's more that it's just a strong kind of asset to your fighting force.
Right. Okay. So let's finish off with a few other interesting story events like that'll pop up quite a few times. They're not. Some of these are not so critical. There isn't much more to say about them other than you'll come across them multiple times. Age, which is obviously depends upon which age milestone a character reaches. So again, it's how much XP you've accumulated, and it's a chance for your characters to increase in their abilities and also gain fighting arts. and also if they reach the first one, they can then finally begin to get proficiencies in weapons. If you increase your courage and you hit milestone, that means you can roll on one of the 3 tables of people when you hit that milestone, because that's the bold story event. And again, that's a chance for increasing abilities and also increasing character profiles, so increasing strength or survival or so forth like that. And you also got these 3 abilities, which is one, which is if you're in the showdown phase, you hit your courage milestone, is you ignore the being knocked down by brain trauma or intimidation, which is pretty good. If you get it in the hunt phase, it means when rolling to determine a straggler, you get to add your hunt experience to the roll. And if you reach this milestone in the settlement phase, you gain the matchmaker ability, which is that you can spend an endeavor once per year and trigger an intimacy roll, which is really useful to just trigger it that easily. The equivalent, of course, is if you increase your understanding, and that unlocks the insight story event. So again, there's increases in stat lines that occur there, and if you hit your insight milestone during the showdown, it means at the start of the survivor's turn, if you are adjacent to the monster, you can reveal the top AI card and put it back on top of the deck. So essentially, you can work out whether you need to even bother using a rawhide headband or not. If you hit it in the hunt phase, you get to roll +2 on the investigate tables, which is really, really good, because some of those tables have a lot of good stuff that you can win.
One thing that struck me with investigate is a lot of the tables aren't referred to by any kind of title. So we kind of struggled finding quite what was an investigate table. Is that just anything on the...
No, it will say whether they're investigate or not.
Okay.
And then if you hit it in the milestone in the settlement phase, essentially, if that survivor is a returning survivor, you get an extra endeavor. So again, you'll innovate quicker. So those are all pretty much standard. I think the only thing, if we ever looked at the intimacy story event, I guess we've not. So this is when this occurs is if you trigger an intimacy event, that's a chance to obviously have a new survivor born to your settlement. The terminology in here is quite important because it's nominate one consenting male and one consenting female survivor. So you have to choose which 2 are going into it before you do any rolls, and then you roll on the table. And obviously, if this is the first time you're rolling on it, you trigger Principle of New Life. And if you roll on a 1, the couple can't bear the weight of the world, and they walk off into the darkness together, and they both die, which is a terrible result. If you get a 2 or a 3, unfortunately, the female survivor dies during childbirth, but you get and she dies with her child. And the male survivor mourns her death and gets a random disorder and insanity. 4, 5, 6 is okay. You get a brand new survivor. The child is born, and they do not have ink that stain their founders' faces, which is an important distinction between these new survivors being born and the original survivors that you play in the original intro hunt. 7 to 8 is, again, +1 population. Male and female survivors get extra survival as a result. They get extra survival points. Obviously, if you don't have a high enough survival limit, you'll max out. The fun thing there is if you've innovated the bed, it means the newborn survivor gets +1 permanent strength. So that's always good. So you can see with that and some of the other innovations and principles of the game that you'll start having survivors born like with +2 or even +3 strength, which is clearly something you need in the later game when you're fighting tougher monsters.
Definitely.
And the last one is you get a pair of newborns, and if you roll a 10 and you've got Hovel, you get Birth of a Saviour, which is a really good story event, and I think it's the last one we'll look at. So, James, you want to just run us through what Saviours are?
So Saviours. Well, Saviours are strange. They're kind of your superheroes or your superhumans in the setting. The newborn vanishes from the loving arms of the settlement for a fraction of a second. In that second, they spend a lifetime in the domain of the ethereal dreamer, and they return with a dream. And at that point, you get to choose one of the three dreams, which defines what its ability is going to be, or its bonus ability is going to be. There's the red dream, which is the dream of the beast, and you gain 1 permanent red affinity, so you don't actually have to have any gear socketed to be able to claim that red affinity for any particular affinities on what gear you do have.
Unless it's a jigsaw.
Yes, unless it's a jigsaw one, which means it has to be a red affinity on that piece.
Yeah.
You gain the 2 following abilities, which is for each red affinity you have one of your attack rolls automatically hits each attack,
which is awesome because if you're at some point, in the early half of the game, you're more than likely going to make lion armor and katars, and that armor set has a lot of red affinities on it. So all of that hideous amounts of attacks that you'll get with your paired weapons are all going to auto hit, which is awesome.
Yeah. You're just going to be ripping through things, especially using that on early lions or something. You're just going to absolutely tear through it. But there is kind of the next ability is kind of a price to using saviors, but it also does make them stronger. In the aftermath, gain 3 additional hunt XP, which means you're going to be aging like nobody's business.
So that means at the end of a hunt, if they survive, a survivor is technically gaining in total 4 hunt XP, 1 for the hunt and 3 due to this. Okay.
So you also can't place other type gear in your gear grid. So there is a particular type of gear called other. So you can't give them the Twilight Sword, for example.
Is the Twilight Sword actually other, is it?
I think it's other.
I'm going to find some examples. If you keep going through the types of things, I'll try and find some examples of gear that they can't have.
Okay. It's still got a couple of bonuses on the red extra life exchange, which is you gain +1 permanent strength, which with each age milestone. So that's in addition to you rolling the age story event. So this survivor is going to be absolutely just smashing the wounds towards the end. But when you retire, you cease to exist.
Yes.
Either you're drawn back to the dream or you age out of existence. It's kind of horrific. But then we've got the Green Survivor, which is you gain 1 permanent green affinity automatically. You have Dormenatus. When you depart, gain 1 armor to every hit location for each green affinity you have. So green affinity, you get a lot of evasion with green affinity. It's a lot of utility sets usually, which means that could actually be quite nice that you have this really kind of tanky character who can dodge a lot as well. But you also, in the aftermath, you gain the 3 additional hunt XP, just like the red survivor. It can't equip other gear. You gain +1 permanent evasion with each age milestone. So you're going to be even better at avoiding being hit, which actually probably is very helpful for Nemesis encounters, I'd say. Because, if you have anyone who can take being targeted but not actually get hit, That's really nice. And then you have the blue dream, which is the dream of the lantern. For every blue affinity you have, your ranged weapons gain this amount of range, and your melee weapons gain this amount of reach.
Yeah, that is nuts.
Yeah, we had a blue survivor with guitars, and was it guitars? I just remember them blasting a creature from across the battlefield with a hideous amount of attacks, which turns out to be a lot of fun. But in the aftermath, you get +1 permanent luck with each age milestone, and that is really good if you're going to be hitting something that you can critically attack, because you're increasing basically the window at which you get to auto wound and also cancel a lot of the reactions on a lot of cards.
Yeah, blue savers are pretty awesome like that.
I think there has been word though that Adam wants to nerf saviors a bit.
Okay.
In a rules update. I haven't seen what that update is yet, but I imagine it will probably come out with maybe if there's any like rules updates or erratas that come out with a Kickstarter, I imagine that'll be where we hear about them.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I had a quick check of gear types. I can't see anything that counts as other. I've never seen that type.
I know there was some. It's up at the top. So the Butcher's Cleaver, for example, and the Forsaker's Mask that we talked about earlier are other.
Oh, are they actually other? Hold on, let me go back to.
It's in the
rare gear.
It's in the small italic text up at the top.
Oh, is it small italic? Oh, I see. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Pretty much.
All the rare gear is other. Yeah. So like the Thunderwall is other, Twilight Sword is other, and the Muramasa is okay. Fine.
So it's mostly gear that you get from special hunt events and things, or
but it would make saviors utterly insane if they had access to some of those weapons.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't make sense for them to have access to some of those weapons like the Twilight Sword or so forth. Okay, fine. Well, we've been through a lot then, which covers all the early story events. And I mean, if I was to choose a savior to take, if you get access to one in the early game, which is obviously odds are good that could happen, because you could have innovated Hovel, and your principal life could be the nurturing one, so you get to roll twice and pick the highest result. I would mostly say early on the best one to get is Dream of the Beast, because your survivors are more than likely not very very strong, and yet but also the beasts aren't dealing lots of damage at this point in the game. So having someone that can help rip through monsters quickly, or even a nemesis encounter quickly, is better than perhaps the other options. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah,
but I think they're all pretty good. Yeah, go on.
I think red is definitely a very strong way to go for the beginning. I'd consider maybe picking blue if you're at a stage where you've actually got a couple of weapons or anything. If you can get that on a fast character, the additional luck is going to be handy. And as we talked about with the both the Butcher and the White Lion, even just that little bit of range that lets you stand outside of their immediate reaction can be hugely helpful.
Yeah, especially if it's range and you gain that amount in range due to blue affinities. You could have someone that's armed with a bow attacking light from 10 or so squares away, which is quite a serious advantage.
Yeah. And it helps negate the fact that you can't move and shoot with the early lion bow.
Yeah. Cool. I think then that's pretty much it for this episode. Next time we're going to have to look at the Phoenix with that arrival, and we'll look at some of the other story events that we've got in here. And what with the Phoenix being the last quarry, I think then after that we'll be looking at I think the next episode of that we'll mostly have to look at the Kingsman, because he's a pain in the ass, and mostly the Hand. So if people want to get in contact with us, they can get us via darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. We're on Facebook with Darker Days Radio. We're on Google Plus with the Darker Days Radio community. We've got the blog, which has been a bit silent recently because I've not done any more painting recently or gaming. I will get on with that at some point soon. We've got our Twitter @Darker Days Radio, and we have got, as I said, there is quite a few video episodes coming up in conjunction with Beasts of War. So that's www.beastsofwar.com. Yes, is there anything else I've missed, James?
So yeah, if you guys are interested in Kingdom Death, keep your eye on Kickstarter, because that's going to be happening. Soon. And
yeah, that's literally like 4 weeks' time.
Yeah, if you want to get into Kingdom Death, that is going to be a great way to do it.
Yeah, we have no idea what's going to be going on. I hope it's meant to be mainly funding, trying to get it to a production level so they could have enough units made so it can also be sold in shops, because seemingly people have no problem buying a $400 game. And it is better that people can buy it that way or buy it via the Kickstarter, rather than the level of scalping of prices which happens on eBay and so forth, where people are selling copies of Kingdom Death for like, $800 or $1,000. It's just ridiculous. Though, I mean, James, there's still one expansion yet to ship, which is the Lantern Festival.
Yeah. Last word on the Lantern Festival is that it went through a bit of an overhaul. It was going to be a bit smaller, but now it's kind of increased in scope. I'm really excited to see anything about it. Can't wait for it to actually turn up. And from some of the models that we've seen at... some of the models have already been released via resins. So you've got Frog Dog and the Griffin, and then there was the Screaming God at
Gen Con, and a few other things at Gen Con. So we've still got those to look forward to. So the question is whether, depending on how well the Kickstarter does, is what kind of expansions get funded off the back of it. Well, I think the point is, I think many of these expansions are going to happen anyway. I think the question is how quickly, and that's what the Kickstarter will clearly help push forward. And also, I think there are it depends whether there's also any development to go on with other games or other game variants based in the Kingdom Death universe.
Yeah, because there was what was it? The Nightmare Ram was originally going to be a dungeon crawling expansion.
Yeah, I think there's meant to be something to do with dungeon crawling. I wonder if that would be like tiles that you put on the Kingdom Death board, so that the board is no longer so the board's no longer like open plan, but is actually passageways.
Yeah, I think the prototype I saw on the blog had 3 small 3x3 tiles, and you laid those out in the pattern of the dungeon.
You see, that would make sense actually if it's an expansion monster which is fought via a network of tunnels, because that totally changes how you have to attack.
I think that would work for the. There was talk about a Firefox or a
Ringtail Fox.
Ringtail Fox expansion, which was meant to be with tunnels and whatnot.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting that. Cool. Okay, so there's a lot also coming up. Hopefully, I guess that's it really for now. So I think that's it for this episode, and we'll be back with you soon, hopefully with some more actual Chronicles of Darkness content. So thank you for listening, and good night.
Good night, everybody.